Too late.
Bing, bong, boom.
It's too late to apologize.
All right, we'll see. I just told all the Discord people to join up, so our Discord's grown a lot.
Man, I wish I had time to traverse it.
Yeah, just under 300 people, so that's not too bad, I don't think.
300 million people?
That's crazy,
That's
dog.
true. That's true. We've surpassed the Joe Rogan experience.
That's inevitable. Crazy. Honestly, I mean, if Midas Touch could do it, I don't see why we couldn't.
That's true.
Sure, they have a bunch of viral videos and world-class talent, and Adam Mockler. I should text Adams. He could have been our fourth amigo, our fourth musketeer.
That's true. At least we have dashing good looks.
We do. That is true. That is true. There's no doubt about that. Let's see. Non-fond. Hey, that guy was your partner, wasn't he? In a debate?
He was. He's doing very well on the debatosphere. He's been getting more into the econ debates, but I don't know. Honestly, I find that a lot of economic discussions very ebb and flow. You know, a lot of people want to talk current events, politics, but economics only comes up every now and then, like whenever there's a trade war or, you know, a budget resolution or something. So luckily, I guess Trump's given us some stuff to talk about this last week. So,
folks, we should go ahead and say Pisco will not be in attendance. Pisco had a prior obligation. He was trying to make friends like other friends. So he's spending the evening by himself. No, I think he's with family or something like that. So he will not be with us.
That's true. And I will never forgive him for that, for missing this show.
You know, I love my family, but I also believe that friends are the family you choose. And just the total lack of respect he clearly has for us is unacceptable. I mean, my God, Hutch is here. Hutch made time. We're even here early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's been evident for quite some time.
Mm-hmm. I like the idea of starting this a bit earlier. I don't know why I picked 7:30 in the first place. I think it was because I was like doing 7 videos a day and like I needed that time. But I'm trying to be a bit more balanced, have a better work-life balance. So
yeah, conservative. What is it down to now? 3 or 4 videos a day or something, or
about 4 or 5 still. 4 or 5.
All right. Yeah, that sounds trivial, but I guess a 30% reduction in work probably is a pretty meaningful difference, I'm sure.
Bro. Go ahead, Hutch. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to ask, do you still do all the editing yourself?
I do it all myself, baby. I'm a one-man show.
I just don't understand that.
I'm a one-man show. It's crazy. I mean, man,
you could bring in an editor so easily. Just put out a call in your area. And, you know.
I just don't know how much I'd airing this out there in the world. So like any offers I make, they're going to fucking, they're going to overprice me or overcharge me. Number one, I don't know how much to offer. Number two, I don't know how much to, like what to expect and all that. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I've gotten so used to grinding it out myself, but believe it or not, the editing is like the least of these, right? I've got it down to a science where for the most part, I'm able to, by the time I take the raw file and drop it into Premiere Pro, I would say it takes me 10 minutes.
Because you don't even do any cuts. You don't even do any cuts, do you?
No, I mean, listen, I'll be honest with you. I love, I think Pisco, you and Pisco share the same editor. I love how you guys do it. It looks so slick, the sizzle reel, the intro and all that shit. I love it. It. And I think even though I don't stream, with the exception of Live and Learn, I could probably because sometimes I do that. Like sometimes I would say probably 4 times out of 10, I'll take like the key clip or whatever, like a key moment of it and lead with that. And then it cuts into my intro and then we do the process. But even that, I would say in about 10 minutes. Now what happens is which this happens more often than I care to, because I'm in such a fucking hurry, I'll keep the mic muted. And so I get through an entire recording, go to upload it. There's no audio from me because I had my mic muted the whole time. And I say some choice words. The outtakes, if you guys could see and hear the outtakes that I have.
Motherfuck.
Oh, bro. If I had a swear jar, my cup would runneth over. Like the unhinged shit that I have said. And no one can hear because the mic is muted. But yeah. How's your content coming, man? I mean, because you're still like, I see like, is it twice daily uploads or once daily?
It's usually once, but we do miss some days. Like I'd like to be more selective about it, to be honest with you. But he's already kind of doing that. But yeah, the views are starting to kick up a little bit on the YouTube live side of thing. That's been really fun because that's been growing like more and more. We had like 1,300 people in there last night watching the State of the Union, and like when I first started doing the YouTube live stuff, it was like, 300, 400, maybe even lower, like 100 to 200. And it's just been slowly growing over the last like 5 months. So that's been really cool. And I think the VOD stuff feeds into the live stuff. Like it helps the live stuff. So
yeah, I mean, it sounds like you have a pretty like integrated audience. Like for me, it's totally the opposite. Like I do obviously pretty well on my pre-recorded stuff, and then my non-live, like that's not shit by comparison. Like Brian Tyler Cohen, he pulled in like I think 40,000 concurrent viewers watching the I call it the State of the Union, but that Trump speech to Congress. Like he can pull. Mockler was in DC, and it wasn't on Midas Touch's channel. It was on Adam's channel, and he's over 1 million at this point. And he had like 15 concurrent viewers, like 15,000. So, but yeah, Luke doesn't struggle as much as I do, but Luke is also someone that when we go live, because we just so very rarely do it consistently, we don't pull anything close to what our like pre-recorded videos get. So it's awesome that you're starting to see them rise together. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, folks. Yeah. I mean, again, I just want to say Pisco will not be joining us, so this will be obviously the better version of Live and Learn, because we don't have that prick, that Merrick Garland apologist here.
Can we talk about transgender mice?
You mean transgenic mice? Although, did you see the fact check of the fact check? Did you catch that?
No.
So for context, and maybe we
are you talking about the White House tweet? Because I saw the White House tweeted something. Okay,
yeah. Well, maybe you can. I'll bring up the fact check of the fact check, but why don't you bring up the initial claim and the subsequent fact check by the lamestream media?
Well, the initial claim was that Doge had found $8 million in NIH funding to make mice transgender, which I don't even know where to begin with that. Like, if a transgender mice would imply like we forced the mouse to have gender dysphoria and then gave it gender affirming care, and then it experienced relief from that care, which is of course fucking ridiculous. But with the MAGA people, they just conflate like so many things. And so the reality, as far as I'm aware, and you can get I'm sure you're probably aware more of the particulars in terms of the numbers, the amount of the funding and where that funding went. But what was going on was we do this kind of research where we literally like insert human DNA into mice, and then we'll give them similar drugs that we give human beings, and then we'll test how their body responds to it. In this case, some of that study went towards, like, I think it was measuring cancer rates for people that are on hormone therapy. And then that claim turned into, we're making mice trans.
Yeah, one of the programs was funding for the relationship between gender affirming care, medicine, and like the pharmacological elements of that, and cancer. Right. But what was interesting was the fact check of the fact check also included that, and it like pulled some other random examples too of like of similar sorts of things. And so they were like, Donald Trump once again, lamestream media is wrong, Trump was right. But it was like, and they fished for everything, like to come up with a sum that was greater than 8 million, because that was the initial claim, $8 million of transgender mice.
I think the actual number was like 250,000 or something, or 450,000, something.
Well,
not even
like
even $1 million
of that specific program. But again, there's a really good fact check going around, the viral one of he just conflated transgenic with transgender. Right. And then they scrambled after the fact to come up with this ad hoc, or this post hoc like rationale for, actually Trump was right, because if you add all these things up together and they say the word trans in at one point, those those fucking letters.
Well, people are speculating that they whatever AI they came up with to like filter these programs and try to find ways that they put in trans and then it picked up this program. That's like what people are speculating, which seems wholly believable.
Right, but the point is that even the fact check, like even their version of the fact check, does not prove the initial claim, which was that there were $8 million on. He said that the government was spending $8 million on trying to make mice trans.
Right.
And that's ridiculous, right? So like even the claim and the most charitable interpretation was wrong. But I said, since we're talking about it, I mean, I hope the audience does not want us to bring up clips because I'd rather not suffer through it again.
That's tough.
I'm sure longest
address that a president has ever given to Congress. That's the longest last night, 1 hour and 40 minutes.
And it felt much longer. It felt much. Jessica Tarla. So Jessica and I were DMing back and forth because I was like, this is crazy. And she goes, but if they, she goes, I even put this on Twitter, but she goes, if you don't interrupt, it goes by quicker. And
I was going to mention that. I was going to mention that because I feel like today is going to be one of those days where like, I just fully agree with all of your criticisms of the Democratic Party. Because that's all I just felt so frustrated last night watching it. I would have much rather they've been so disruptive throughout, like coordinate. So every 5 minutes, a new person stands up, makes a scene and gets kicked out. It would have infuriated Trump. And I think like that's how we need to sort of take this shit on.
Oh shit. Oh fuck. He's here.
Hey guys, how we doing?
What? My goodness.
He's here.
Back
What
from the
hospital
dead.
are you in?
Don't worry about it. Let's get into it.
Yeah. We were just
No,
reliving.
right.
We were living the first, the greatest president, according to himself, the greatest president ever, giving the most amazing presidential address, and how it felt much longer than it actually was.
It was
Amongst the
quite
best.
long.
Yeah.
It was incredibly long and very poorly, I think, spoken. But yeah, I mean, what can I say? It is just lie after lie, and really my eyes were focused on the cringe of the Democrats the whole time, but I'm sure we'll get into that.
Well,
no,
actually, Hutch was teeing that up.
I was just bringing that up. I'm usually the guy that's like defending the Democratic Party in this group. And this time around, I felt just unbridled frustration last night. I felt like their response was tone deaf. I felt like they were just taking it on the chin. Like reportedly Jeffries instructed the House members to remain, quote, tame, which I don't think plays well to normies. Like to normies, I feel like it just looked like Trump was bullying the Democrats and they weren't doing anything about it.
Yeah, Jeffries.
So the optics of that was just so frustrating to me.
There was reporting that Jeffries wanted no stunts, don't make a scene, and obviously that's just a little ridiculous if you ask me. Of course,
Because I had the best tweet about this. It showed Hakeem Jeffries like corralling people. It's like, all right, guys, remember single file, then really make sure you're quiet.
Yeah,
it was such a perfect caption.
He did. He gave off that fucking energy, man. He really did. Like, and they cut to him multiple times throughout the address, and he's just like, you can tell like he's like slow blinking, and he was like trying to present himself as like this disaffected, like I'm totally disinterested in it. But yeah, I mean, the Democrats have one power, quote unquote power, and I think that that's a generous description, which is the bully pulpit. And their bully pulpit is smaller by definition. There is no politician whose bully pulpit is singularly large as the president's. And then of course you have Republican majorities in both chambers, so they get to set the agenda. This was it, and what you do with it matters because you don't have any other real cards to play. This was your chance to go bold, because the other thing is let's generously give everybody. Let's just give the critics their just grant them the premise that if there had been a disruptive response by the Democrats, that would have been bad. So fucking what? There's not another election until a year and 8 months from now. Like we would have time if it turns out, oh my God, yes, Democrats can't politically be disruptive. We can't play by a comparable MAGA playbook. Then we would have a year and 8 or 9 months to course correct. This was your chance to not only test that, but also to satisfy the base, because the polling is clear on this. Democratic voters do not want Democrats to be pussies. They want the Chris Murphy energy. not the Hakeem Jeffries energy.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, Josiah. I don't think it's going to be that impactful in terms of the election, but it's a signal of where the Democrats are at right now. Sorry if I think my thing just froze. Sorry about that. And I think that I don't know what's happening. Sorry, folks.
Oh boy.
Oh no.
Crazy. But
We can hear you.
yeah, no.
Your
That's all
voice
that
is
matters.
fine. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I'll just turn it off for now and then I'll figure it out. But yeah, no, I think it's just like a bad signal that the Democrats aren't about that life, and that's what's concerning to me. Not that it's going to have electoral outcomes.
Well, I think what the right wing realized a long time ago was that you can kind of decide when, or you can at the very least decide like what the news is going to talk about just by being pretty bombastic in a lot of circumstances. And I think that that's most emblematic, or that's most kind of exposed by the fact that of all the Democrats that were in that chamber, the only one that we're talking about for the most part was Al Green. I mean, I've been hearing more about Al Green than Slotkin, who gave the actual response. And it's because he stood up and he yelled at Trump, right? And Al Green, he's kind of for those that have, local Houston politics guy, for those that have followed Al Green, he's kind
He's
of
a bit of a weirdo.
Bit of a wonky guy, let's say, not in the policy sense, but a bit of a wonky person. But look, I mean, he went out there, he yelled, he got escorted out, made a scene, and then he goes on the cameras afterwards and he says, I was yelling because the president was saying he had a mandate, but I wanted to make it clear he doesn't have a mandate to cut Medicaid, cut Medicare, cut Social Security. And it's like, that's perfect. That's perfect, Al Green. Like, oh my God, I wish all the Democrats had the same energy. That's great messaging, made it a scene, but then turned it into a policy attack against Trump, which is very reasonable. And
I would be surprised. He might be invited on interview. This might elevate his profile. It may not, but it should. He could be on MSNBC, CNN, get interviews, that he otherwise doesn't get as a consequence of this. And he can use it, to your point, Akana Boy, as a launch pad to talk about, the disastrous Trump policies.
I'm not sure he's the best vehicle for that because
I'm not saying that he should.
He is a bit of a weirdo. But,
I'm just saying that you would assume these sort of stunts tend to get rewarded in this political climate. Sure. Melanie Stansbury, she also, I think she was runner-up for the evening. Obviously, the most viral moment was what Green did, but Melanie Stansbury, when Trump was walking down into the well, she stood behind Trump with a sign that said, "This is not normal."
Right.
And it so triggered a Republican congressman that he reached over and knocked it out of her hand.
Right.
And Stansbury, I will say, is a badass. I watch a lot of the oversight and congressional hearings. I mean, she's obviously doesn't have the profile of an AOC or a Moskowitz or anything like a Jasmine Crockett, but she's a sleeper agent there. She's pretty brutal when she wants to be. But this would be a great opportunity to do that.
There were a couple times throughout the speech where I couldn't help but think that there were these perfect opportunities to just laugh. Like Donald Trump, his worst enemy is being laughed at, or his worst fear is being laughed at like that. I mean, it would have triggered him so bad. There were a couple things he said. He said that Doge had found hundreds of billions of dollars worth of waste, fraud, and abuse, which is just such a comically inflated number that I just desperately wanted the entire Democratic side of the aisle to just burst out in laughter. Same thing with the transgender mice thing. If we think back to the debate with Kamala, one of the worst moments in that debate for him is when he was talking about they're eating the cats and the dogs. And one of the reasons why that was such a bad moment for him was Kamala's reaction. She just laughed at him. And the public perception of that moment was not good for Trump. It made him look kind of foolish. And so it just felt like a wasted opportunity. Dems just, boy, yeah. I haven't felt this frustrated. This is the most frustrated I've felt with the Democratic Party.
Because the Democrats can choose. It's clear that the strategy of relying on establishment news media to fact check Trump when he gives a speech filled with nonsense and lies just doesn't really work, right? That doesn't really penetrate the ecosystem of independents and conservatives to the point that you're really making a difference in your electoral outcomes. We've tried that for a decade. Frankly, Biden beat Trump, but if you look at that election, that was an extremely close election, right? We barely beat Trump in 2020. Trump ends up giving us a walloping in 2024. And so, look, the Democrats have a choice. Do they want to continue to do this? Don't make a scene. Just rely on the fact checkers after the fact to say that Trump lied about a bunch of shit and said a bunch of dumb shit. Or do they want to make a scene, right? Do they want to make a scene, get in front of a camera, and steal a lot of that airtime away from Trump? I would much rather the conversation after a speech like this be about the various ways that the Democrats made scenes than all the stupid bullshit that Trump said, right? At least it doesn't seem like that seems like the more strategic thing to do, frankly.
And it's the perfect time to do it. He's on the downswing. Like I shared it privately, but there was a Reuters Ipsos poll that came out today. That was, I'm pretty sure, his worst poll yet. They showed him at 40. This was the first poll released after the Zelenskyy meeting on Friday, which, boy, we didn't even talk about that yet. But what else needs to be said, really? But like, it was the first poll that came out. It has him at 44% approve and then 51% disapprove. Elon is not making great headlines right now. He is insistent on doing these tariffs, and every poll that I've seen so far shows the electorate are not behind these tariffs. He spooked the shit out of the markets yesterday, and so that
poll was before all that as well. Yeah,
was before the tariffs.
Before the tariffs, but not
right.
Yeah.
Well, the Ipsos, I think maybe the latter part, because it was a few days, so like maybe there was one day of tariffing in there, but yeah, he's in a precarious spot right now. And I think what's a big weakness for him is that I fully believe that he thinks that he's like the most popular president since Reagan. Like, I think he's surrounded himself with people that are affirming this delusion that he has this huge mandate, he's this super popular president. He's surrounded by yes men that are telling him this, and it's just not true. And so he is, in my opinion, just really overplaying his hand here. And it's
So somebody pointed this out in chat, ready to pay off that bet on the live show. I will say Hutch is getting close to it. I honestly, as a gesture of good faith, I'd be happy to send it to you right now, because
you already have. You donated super chats. We're good.
Oh,
but I mean, we need some more polls. It's never a good idea to just focus on one poll, just to be clear.
Right. No, exactly. But yes, I mean, this is one of those things where I'd love to be proven wrong. I would love for the American people to care enough about, if not foreign policy, which tends to be, not among the least sexy of polling issues, at the very least Trump's conduct enough that his behavior with Zelenskyy would make a meaningful dent in the polls. I just don't believe that that's likely, but this is one poll indicating at the very least that it is. I would love to be wrong on that.
I think Friday was the most disgusting thing he's done so far in his presidency. That was by far the most angry that I've felt during this presidency. Wow. What he did to Zelenskyy right there was like one of the most shameful, if not the most shameful, press conference I've ever seen. To invite a beleaguered president of a country that's being invaded, and then try to humiliate them, and then pause aid for Ukraine, and then shut off their access to our satellite systems, and now they're being bombed to shit by Russia, who are capitalizing on we are fully helping Russia invade Ukraine at this point.
And something else, I don't know if you were the one who pointed it out or if I heard it elsewhere, because I was listening. My buddy was in town, so I wasn't creating a lot of content that weekend, but I was listening to people, and I think you might have said it or somebody else. Even the premise of, did you say thank you? Let's get down to brass tacks. Thank Trump for what? Yeah. All of the assistance he received came from Joe fucking Biden and the Democrats. You shit talk Joe Biden and the Democrats and the assistance they provided. Why should Zelenskyy? I mean, the reason Zelenskyy should do it is because Trump is president now, and Trump's a thin-skinned narcissist who wants praise for shit that he didn't do. I understand the real.
Which he kind of did. He kind of did with the recent letter that he sent. But yeah,
Zelenskyy thanked Trump when he went there. Like the transcript, I got to find it somewhere. It's like
he said, "God bless Trump." I mean, people are just not listening to what was said in the immediate, before this whole thing went down. He said a completely anodyne statement that was completely true. He asked permission to ask a question of JD Vance. It was not an offensive question, and they acted like children in response to it. So yeah, it was
an offensive question to them because, for whatever reason, the P-tape is real. For whatever reason, they don't want to. They don't want to say anything bad about Vladimir Putin. He fucked little girls. It's on camera. They have video of it. But I don't know why. I'm just saying, that's the reason why he got uncomfortable. He asked the serious question. It was a totally logical question. You want us to do diplomacy with Russia? Okay, great. How am I going to have assurances that Russia is going to respect these diplomatic peace deals when they've violated every peace deal that we've done with them in the last decade? which was, I mean, I what is the problem with that question? But of
Right,
course, to Vance,
because
who,
even Vance, if he wanted to deal with, if he wanted to like basically deflect that for like private negotiations away from the cameras, he could have given a diplomatic response, which is, Mr. President, I totally understand your concern about that, and we definitely have some things to hash out in the negotiations. Like he could have deflected in every which way, but instead he either sincerely interpreted it as a challenge, or I think, just being the cynic that I am, that he was like, perfect, this is an opportunity to showboat and grandstand, and I will pretend that this is some sort of shot across the bow and respond in kind. Now, I don't think it's the most disgusting thing he's done, but of course I tend to focus more on domestic politics than anything else. I still say like all of his conduct surrounding the election was disgusting, but yeah, I hope I'm wrong. I hope this really makes a lasting impact in the polls.
I mean, I think that it'll
For me,
make
it's the Mayor Adams
something of an
thing
impact.
so far.
I think it'll make something of an impact. I think that the Republicans are really overplaying their hand on some of these things, because while it's true that there's a portion of Republicans, like maybe 20%, 30% of Republicans, who would just say like, I'm just pro Putin, I just 100% am on his side on this conflict. That's a very small minority of people at large. I mean, it's almost like if a Democrat took office and was like taking advice from like Jackson Hinkle or something like that. It's like, this would be a very disastrous thing to do, because it's very unpopular. Like Putin in general, Xi Jinping in general, in part because of Republicans, rhetoric from not that long ago, are just very unpopular figures in this country. And Zelenskyy is, again, I think that amongst Americans, like maybe 65, 75% of people would tend to favor Ukraine, or at the very least view Zelenskyy positively. So you do have that minority of people that, don't like Zelenskyy, but I mean, that's, for a populist, that's not really, that math doesn't really work out,
There's quite a large chunk of Americans in a poll that I saw recently that are kind of neutral, which kind of makes sense because foreign policy is very removed from people's day-to-day lives. And there's just, the poll that I saw, that was like 40% of the country was like, I don't really know who's to blame, but it was like 55% Zelenskyy, like 10% Putin. So to your point, there is a very small group of people in this country that are openly pro-Russia, and they're just massively overrepresented on social media with their fucking influencers like Charlie Kirk and Jack Posobiec or whatever.
That kind of makes sense when you think about Trump. Like, where does Trump get his news? Where does Elon get his news? Right? These are like, you see those polls of like people where they get their news sources, and people who get their news from alternative media are just radically far to the right compared to people that get their news from traditional media sources. And that's, Trump and Elon Musk, they're where they check in for their news. That's where, and so these are very out of touch billionaires who think that they have a sense of things because they happen to win an election due to favorable sort of macroeconomic conditions, and not really because of like optimally running a campaign or anything like that. Remember, I was listening to somebody talk about this, how they said that, campaigns can be kind of an unfortunate thing working in the campaigning world, because you could actually be a very, very good, your fixed effect on a campaign could be very, very positive. But at the end of the day, like if you were to pick tough races, or the environment just, overwhelmed your own performance, you're going to be seen as a very, very bad campaigner. But of course, the opposite is true as well. Like, I don't think anybody can look at the strategy of Trump and say, oh yeah, like this, the optimal way to run a campaign is to incoherently ramble. It's to dance randomly. It's to say insane things on a regular basis. It's to be like radical on various positions that are hyper unpopular. It's to get close to billionaires that are also very unpopular, but unfortunately they still won anyway. Right. And so, they have this idea that they really have a sense of things when it's going to probably come crashing down, especially as soon as this new economic data comes out.
Oh, speaking of
which,
jobs report, Jesus Christ. Did you see that? Yeah, they released February's jobs report, or at least the ADP did, and 77,000 jobs, and they predicted 148,000.
That's not surprising at all. To anybody who works in a business, right? I mean, a lot of these conversations have been happening, at least for the finance guys out there, where, a lot of companies are putting hiring on hold. They're pulling job offers. They're pausing investments. And why is that, right? It's not necessarily because any one policy that Trump does is good or bad for their business. It's because of the uncertainty, of anything. Businesses, they like certainty. This is why businesses will, they'll open up factories in authoritarian governments, right? It's not because they're principally committed or not committed to democracy or authority or authoritarianism or anything like that. It's because certain governments, despite their sort of political governance, offer certainty to people. And that's the double-edged sword with fascism and authoritarian government, is that, well, hey, like on one hand, you could have a very stable sort of authoritarian government like the Chinese government, or, American authoritarian government like we have now, very, very unstable.
It's just crony capitalism. It's just crony capitalism at this point when you have like the UAW getting special treatment for the auto industry, which is pretty nonsensical to begin with. Like they get a month to set up multiple factories.
Yeah, that was talk about a fucking virtue signal. I mean, it's obvious what happened. So Trump saw the stock market performance. He got pressure not just from, I imagine, UAW, but also obviously from the big three automakers as well. He reportedly had a conversation with them, and he blinked, right? But he also at the same time doesn't want to fold completely. So about the same time that they announced that they were going to put a 1 month pause on the auto tariffs only, folks, only the auto tariffs for Canada and Mexico. You have Trump publicly shit talking Trudeau. And yeah, he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. Then you have Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, running around on Bloomberg TV.
Maybe we won't do him. I don't know.
Losing. But not just hedging and being squirrely, but getting so fucking triggered, like, no, tariffs aren't inflationary. And then when he gets the data, like the surveys and the jobs reports about like February, whatever, he's like, that's Biden data. That doesn't count. Right. He's like losing his temper. And that's why I've said before, and I'll say it again, and I believe it. Democrats need to keep up the pressure. And I don't care if you dislike it. That's the new fucking standard. If you don't like it, then Donald Trump and the Republicans are 100% to blame for this. Anything bad that happens on a president's watch is that president's fault. That was the MAGA standard for Biden. Democrats and everybody else need to adopt that standard for Trump. Fuck them if they cry. Laugh at them. Like no, it doesn't count. Laugh at them. Troll them. Give them your contempt. The jobs performance is Donald Trump's fault. Prices are Donald Trump's fault. Make that connection.
He even acknowledged it in the speech last night. He said there's going to be some temporary discomfort. And here's what I think the Democrats and the press should do aggressively until they get some kind of an answer. It happened today in the press briefing, but you need to ask the question, what specifically did Donald Trump mean when he said there would be temporary discomfort? Mm-hmm. Like, we need to press them as aggressively as possible to say there's going to be short-term job losses. There's going to be stock slumps. There's going to be inflation. That's what he means when he says that. And we need to get them to be specific about it. It was so funny because Caroline Leavitt was asked 3 separate times that question, and she just dodged every single time. Like, she just pointed to the broader goal of like bringing business back to America and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, and I also somebody in chat mentioned I'm blanking the TSMC. I'm blanking on what Taiwanese something manufacturer. The
manufacturer.
Is it okay? That deal is a consequence of the CHIPS Act signed by Biden. Okay, so a lot of the investiture from
which Trump wants to get rid of, by the way,
right, came from that deal. Okay, so again, this is
Josiah, I thought you said that everything that happens under the president's watch is the result of the president. Oh, you just meant the bad things.
Right. Remember, that's the MAGA standard.
That's the bad things.
I'm not obligated to play by different standards in my enemy. I'm all on board in that. And again, I'll point out those commitments, much of them were made under Biden. So even if I adopted the approach, like, no, we got to be a bit more nuanced than that, Biden still gets all the credit.
But the problem, though, Josiah, is that, while that's a funny rhetorical strategy, and there's certain things like egg prices and stuff where it's funny to blame Trump on, this current economic environment is very much Trump's actual fault, right?
Yes,
like it's not. This isn't like a troll that we're doing. Like, the fact that you have stagnating hiring, stagnating consumer spending in an extremely uncertain macroeconomic environment. Why is it so uncertain? Well, no shit. It's because Trump is doing crazy, outlandish things, right? I mean, he negotiates, a free trade agreement with Mexico and Canada, comes in his next term, says, fuck all that. We're going to scrap it. We're going to do 25% unprecedentedly high tariffs. Never mind. We're going to delay it for a month. We're going to go ahead and implement them. Never mind. We're going to have exceptions on auto parts only because I guess maybe a couple of CEOs have Trump's number and called him about it. Like, obviously this is a really, really uncertain environment, right?
And if you're one of these companies, the smart play is going to be to prepare for the worst, right? So like even if he doesn't follow through on this or that tariff specifically, like you're probably going to want to anticipate the worst so you don't get caught off guard and you have to do like mass layoffs or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, if you're, if you're one of these chip companies or one of these people that wants to invest in this, I mean, in the face of the CHIPS Act potentially being repealed or greatly limited because of executive overreach, I mean, why would you continue with that investment? Why would you try to expedite that investment? Like what you're probably going to do is not necessarily just cancel all of your investment, but you're probably going to slow a lot of things down, reassign people to work on other projects. A lot of that investment fundamentally is just slowed very, very significantly. Another piece of economic news that came out was the Atlanta Fed. They released kind of a GDP forecast, and they came out and said, "Oh yeah, by the way, our GDP forecast on the last month of Biden was probably like 2% growth or something like that for the first quarter of 2029." And then they come out with their next forecast and they say, "Actually, we're going to contract by 1.5%." Then they come out a week later and say, "Actually, we're going to contract by over 2%, right?" And for those of you that don't understand kind of the significance of that, a contraction of 2% is in line, strictly speaking, with a very real recession, right? Like that is a very real level of contraction that you would see during a recession. Some people will cope and say, "Oh, that was just because all these businesses are importing a shitload of stuff and imports are subtracted from GDP." Number one, who caused that to happen, right? Like who's causing the businesses to want to import a bunch of shit all of a sudden to beat the tariffs? That's Donald Trump. Number two, it wasn't just that, right? They said in their forecast, "Hey, we also see and see a noticeable decline in consumer spending." There's a lot of people who are saying, "Look, I'm saving my money right now because I don't know if I'm going to be laid off anytime soon or anytime later, because I might be a government employee. I might be in an industry that's significantly directly impacted or indirectly impacted by all of the Biden industrial policy that Trump wants to scale back. I might be in an industry that's significantly or indirectly impacted by all of these tariffs. And by the way, what even is going to be the final tariff policy? Like, I don't know, right? There's so much uncertainty that, of course, people are pulling back."
Yeah, because it's important to remember, too, that when Trump announced the initial 25% tariff on all Canadian imports, and then Trudeau, and I got to say, the posture he took was pretty impressive. I did not expect it and it could be because he knows, he announced his resignation or whatever. Maybe that's what enabled him to find his
it's popular for them in Canada.
Oh, yeah, the Liberal Party's doing well right now, but I'm pretty sure, unless I'm mistaken, there are elections against him as well. I think like Christian Friedman or Chrystia Friedman, who used to be his deputy prime minister and finance minister, she's running against him. And quite frankly, I hope she takes the position because from the interviews I've watched of her, she's a real ball buster.
He agreed to not run in the next election. Right. So the Liberals are electing their own leader right now. I think up on Trump rhetoric is very popular in Canada.
No, exactly. And so even the conservative frontrunner, Pierre Poilievre or whatever, he's even now having to bust Trump's balls as well to try to like remain competitive. But my point is that Trudeau comes out and says, and I thought he gave a really good speech. Is like, "Listen, American voters, if you're watching, we don't want this. We don't want to pick this fight. We don't want to be hurt by you. We don't want to hurt you. But this is because of your government. Donald Trump picked this fight, and we have to defend ourselves." And then he says, "I want to talk to Donald directly." And he doesn't say Mr. President. He says Donald. And anybody who follows Trump, reportedly, this is his niece, Mary Trump or whatever, has said this for years. He hates to be called by his first name, especially since he won the presidency. He likes the pomp and the circumstance. Mr. President, Mr. President. So he says Donald. I'm not usually inclined to quote the Wall Street Journal, but I agree with them. This is a very dumb move. So you have him not using the title, calling him dumb. And then after they announce their reciprocal tariffs, which I believe are going to be targeted towards red states, which I think is just genius. Then Trump pops off with, "Okay, if you deploy tariffs against us, we're going to take that percentage and increase our tariffs against you by a like percentage." So I don't know what that has meant in terms of the actual policy, but if Trump's words are to be taken literally, that 25% tariff against Canadian imports is about to go to 50%.
And he's not even giving them an off-ramp. Like, there's no sense to it. Like, he's been asked numerous times, what do you want Canada to do? Because like they've already taken a serious action on fentanyl. Like it's like 1,000-to-1 ratio coming in from Mexico and Canada, respectively. And he doesn't have an answer. He's like, there's nothing they can do.
No, but Hutch, this
So
has
it's
all
like,
been a lie.
so what is the point? What is the point of
the justification for tariffs has always been a lie, right? Because the reason why they have to pretend that this is about fentanyl or, an immigration invasion or anything like that is because my understanding is that the only way for the president to unilaterally impose tariffs is to justify it on some sort of existential grounds, right? That this is just necessary for security and stability in the country. So this has always been a made up reason, right? Trump just believes in tariffs. He just thinks that tariffs are like a print money machine for the government. Oh, these foreign companies pay the tariffs anyway. That's been extremely clear. Like, it's very, very clear that Trump just has no idea how tariffs actually work, and he has no idea how to actually set up a functional tax code. The only thing that he cares about is, being able to say that he's trying to bring back industry in his own way. That's not the Joe Biden way with the CHIPS Act and the IRA. And he also cares about, protecting businesses, probably from the people who are closest to him, right? That's probably the only thing that he really cares about.
He indicated in the in a press briefing either yesterday or the day before, somebody asked him about like who pays the tariffs, like where he got the idea that it's not that it's the other country that's paying the tariff. And he said something along the lines of like the idea that the other countries don't pay the tariff is a myth. I don't know if you guys saw that clip. But
it's a myth.
It really seems like he genuinely does not know.
Well, I mean, it's maybe Pisco can talk about this, but I don't.
Real quick, I'm sorry, real quick, because we have a couple of conservatives in chat. Just always want to say, because we haven't said it in a while, if anybody disagrees with us, if you're a conservative like this, you're all just completely dishonest, lying assholes, pathetic.
What a message.
I know. Well, if you're a conservative, I guess that means you're more likely to vote. You should probably want us to run for president, given your voting record. But you are more than welcome to jump in.
Fire up the webcam, get in here.
Exactly. Yeah, and we'll send you an invitation. You're welcome to join. Just let us know in chat that you want to discuss these issues because you disagree. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, maybe Pisco can speak to the rationale for this. I mean, I guess I understand the rationale, but like, one of the reasons why Trump has been able to get away with this from like a court perspective, like, national security issue, it's obviously made up, like there's clearly no serious national security threat originating from Canada, is that it seems like courts have said before that, look, we don't really want to be in the business of evaluating whether or not there's actually national security threats. Like, we kind of just defer to the executive in that regard. But this just seems like complete bullshit. Like, why the fuck not? Why not go in there and try to actually evaluate whether Trump is in good faith interpreting these laws, right? Come up with a test, come up with some sort of standard by which we can determine whether or not the executive is being good faith with their implementation of these laws. Frankly, it sounds extremely selective to say that kind of thing, considering for the last, fucking 10 years, or not 10 years, for the last, few years since we've had this super majority on the court has been taking over more and more power from the the executive branch. It's like, why do you pause on that when it comes to national security issues? I saw a speculation that they were going to do the exact same thing when it came to his immigration crackdown, that the speculation was that, well, if he says immigration is a national security issue, we're just going to defer to the executive branch because, we don't want to be in the business of determining whether or not there's a security threat. Like, why the fuck aren't you in that business, court? You've been in the business of every fucking thing else when it comes to the executive branch over the last 10 years. So anyway,
it's obviously inconsistent with their rationale with respect to the overturning of Chevron, where you couldn't defer to the executive's determinations on the ambiguity of certain statutes, and I guess the court is now feeling that it's willing to wade into those issues of executive determinations as relates a number of different policies. But yeah, this is obviously a pretext, especially as it relates to Canada with the fentanyl stuff. And my inclination is as yours, Econoboy, that this court will be loath to double guess determinations made by the executive as to national security issues. If today's opinion is any indication, we have at least 4 votes that it's seemingly willing to defer to anything this president does as an important government action and worthy of deference. So yeah, I totally agree with you on there, Econoboy. I just want to emphasize, stuff could get really out of hand pretty fast for the economy. I think if shit gets too bad with growth contracting, you could see stagflation. and that's just going to put us in an awful position because the monetary policy, which should be raising interest rates, is going to be causing a lot of harm to the American economy. And Trump's inclination is to lower interest rates, which is going to create, if he does that, and I think he's even bragged about it. He might have even bragged about it during the joint address. If he does that, then inflation is going to get really, really, really bad, and that can. It's such a problem of his own making, and it's really showing him to be an incompetent steward of the economy.
Yeah, I do want to talk about the Supreme Court case because I think I sent you a text or a super chat or whatever, and then I guess you were out of town or something earlier today, but maybe we'll do something about it tomorrow. My understanding is Trump did suffer not necessarily a final, but a decisive defeat at the Supreme Court regarding, his notions of unitary executive theory and, his brushing up of how much the president can shirk congressional appropriations. So I do want to talk about that, but I guess I want to close the loop on Trump's speech, and we didn't even really talk about Alyssa Slotkin's response. So
wait, can we?
I'm sorry.
Can we?
Yeah. Let's do it. What'd you think?
I just want to say, I knew after listening to 12 words that the speech was garbage and it was written poorly and not for the moment. I listened to a little bit more of it. I can't say I listened to all of it. I had to turn it off after a while, not because it wasn't like a speech that said words or even some words that I agreed with, but it's just the notion of Democrats, Republicans, we agree on this common sense stuff. It's such a bygone era. It feels like this fake West Wing style Democrat speech where we're like extolling the virtues of bipartisanship and Ronald Reagan and all that stuff. And to me, it is just a complete misread of where the American people are at. And it feels phony. And I could recognize that after 10 to 12 words. And frankly, even just the tone, it sounded phony. And yeah, so I thought it was horrible. I gave it an F-. I think that we need to start meeting the moment and being aggressive and blaming Trump for all the woes that you're facing right now and tying him to Elon Musk.
I've got my thoughts, but does anyone else want to jump in on the Slotkin? Well, did everybody here watch the Slotkin response? I did earlier today.
No, unfortunately, I did not.
Just clips.
I will say just one thing real quick, though, even though I didn't watch it. I do think there's one thing that's kind of stupid, which is there were a ton of lefties that were jumping on her for the Reagan quote. Mm-hmm. I wonder what you guys think about that.
So I think that was misguided. I saw Matt Bender from the Majority Report, and I like Matt Bender, but I think it was taken out of context, which is what she was saying was, Reagan as a counterpoint, as a conservative that she didn't agree with, but who stood up to Russia or to, the Soviet Union. And had Trump been in Reagan's position as a Republican president, dealing with the Soviets, the Cold War would have ended very differently. And I thought that was a fair point. But I do want to say,
it's a complicated point, and it's a mouthful to explain.
It is, and the reason that I want to be somewhat charitable to Bender is I think that there's some trauma from the election of the perception that Kamala swung right and was and basically trying to appear as a diet Republican. We've long litigated and heard that complaint. So I think that when people hear the Reagan comparisons and it seems to suggest like to prop up Reagan, I understand why people get pissed. But no, she wasn't saying.
But in Bender's point, he very deliberately left out the relevant follow up contextual quote. He just stopped it at what exactly was the tweet?
Yeah, you can pull it. I mean, I think that
he said as a Cold War, he quoted, "As a Cold War kid, I'm happy that Ronald Reagan was in office," and the rest of the quote gives it an entirely different meaning.
Not
like
Trump,
she was not glazing Ronald Reagan. He so dishonestly framed that quote.
Yeah,
I don't understand this charitability that you're giving him right now when it's just so obvious that he did that maliciously.
But I come at it from a different perspective because I would have said Ronald Reagan fucking sucked in a variety of ways. But I'm glad that he was
even Reagan.
He was president instead of Trump or whatever. I think the point is, and I am sympathetic to this. I think I've just not seen And maybe the data's there. Maybe you've got it. Maybe Pisco or Conaboy has it or whatever. We're inundated with information. But we just saw in the last election nothing meaningful produced by trying to glaze conservatives or make inroads with Reagan Republicans. And quite frankly, in so many ways, Reagan was a disastrous president. So if you're going to favorably compare Reagan to Trump, I would also favorably compare Reagan to Trump, but I think it needs to begin with Reagan fucking sucks and has a small dick.
Reagan was corrupt.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy, if you think about Iran-Contra, if you think about the damage he did with his privatization and tax cuts, I mean, this guy's a no good. Reagan sucked. And
revocation of the fairness doctrine and stuff like that. I mean, what do you
think? I get y'all's point, but to Hutch's point, I think, for instance, like a great example of this, in my view, was John Ossoff's speech on why he voted to basically put conditions on arms to Israel, right? And he gave this incredibly good, it was like a very tight 8 or 9 minute speech where he talks about how Reagan actually did the exact same thing when he felt like Israel's military actions were overstepping the line. And I think that, I think it's okay to do stuff like that insofar as you're pointing out kind of a conservative hypocrisy. I mean, to Hutch's point, I don't think it's really worth like overreacting to stuff like that, because I don't think that by quoting Reagan or by saying something like that, I mean, obviously the phrasing, to Josiah's point, could be a little bit better. Like, I'm glad Reagan was president. You could probably throw in like, look, I thought Reagan was a terrible president, but he was clearly better on this issue than Donald Trump. Like, even Reagan wouldn't stoop so low as to shake the hand of Gorbachev or something like that. And that's basically what Trump is doing. But, that's like a semantic point. I guess, the word choice you use does
broader
matter,
than that, Economo. I think you recognize, I think that's what you're saying, which is just the tone of it, the notion of it being reconciliatory. It needs to be biting. It needs to be incisive. It needs to meet the moment. And that means like calling them out on their corrupt shit and saying, look, he promised you that he was going to lower prices on day one. He's now telling you something different, that you're going to feel pain. That takes no time to write. And get around the fluff of these lofty ideas that are complicated. You say, he promised this, and look at what's happening right now. Look at our growth estimates. This is garbage. This is trash. This is corruption. Look at Elon
honestly,
Musk.
And that right there, I'm of the opinion that of the two things that Democrats need to be relentless on, because the polling is favorable towards us and disfavorable towards them: Doge and the economy. You tie everything back to how Donald Trump promised. This isn't Democrats imposing a ridiculous. This is what Donald Trump promised you. Play the clips, roll the tape. When he was courting your votes, he made a deal with you. He created a contract, and he has violated the terms of the contract, because not only has he not cut gas and grocery. Don't make it just eggs. Do not make it just eggs, because what will happen eventually is, assuming that Trump and RFK Jr. are able to get the avian flu under control, we might see egg prices drop. Don't just put all your eggs in one basket, pun intended. Gas, grocery, energy, healthcare, cost of living. He said he would snap his fingers on day one and bring that shit down. You might think that that's ridiculous to hold him to that standard. That is the standard he promised you. He has failed. And not only has he failed, it's going in the opposite direction. And then you hammer Doge on every goddamn thing, because Musk is hemorrhaging support even among Republicans. And I'm sorry, this is a big deal, because I know some people, I do know some people who don't think Musk is that big of, he's not president. He's on the Musk-Trump alliance is incredibly formidable. You have all the cult of personality that Trump has over the Republican Party, and the world's richest man who is like so recklessly committed to this project that he's gonna, he is openly threatening to primary Democrats and Republicans. Breaking up that alliance is paramount. So you hit them on Doge and the economy, and that's all you talk about, in my opinion.
No, I think it's based. I think that focusing in on the promises is really important. I think the tariffs, which all relate to the economy, your goods are all going to go up in price. He's firing people that and bring up a story. Bring up one of these stories. Like, there was a worker who voted for Trump who did this happened, and she trusted him, actually, and he doesn't care about you. He really doesn't. And simple ideas that are true and based in fact, instead of this like, I think Democrats and Republicans can both agree that the border, why are we talking about the border, immigration right now, or anything like that, and points of agreement with Democrats? You should be hammering in on the economic message and on tariffs and Elon Musk. I totally agree, Josiah.
Yeah.
Why do you think they're talking about,
About-
immigration?
Democrats?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea, the concept is, well, we want to protect our, senators and representatives who are in these kind of very swingy districts, and we want to give them some space to talk about immigration. But you can absolutely do that when the moment calls for it, in my opinion. And I don't think that, basically, in my opinion, Trump got the border numbers down by doing illegal shit at the border and closing down asylum. And so, I personally would not be glazing Trump on immigration in any capacity. But I also think people overestimate the importance of immigration. And I think that the economy is going to be a bigger issue for Democrats coming forward, especially, by the way, is you're never going to outflank Republicans on immigration. And so even if it were the case, even if I granted to you that immigration were bigger than the economy, which I don't think it is, Democrats are not going to outflank Republicans on immigration. The most you can do is stop bleeding. And when you're
You don't
doing
need to
these speeches,
outflank them. I don't think you need to outflank them. But in every poll that I saw, that it was the number 2 most salient issue for voters. This idea that it's not that important, I just don't understand.
I think it's overestimated. I think people overestimate. That's all I'm saying.
Well, Hutch, I would totally agree with you that if this were an election year, Democrats would need to emphasize the immigration more. But I think precisely because we are so far from an election year and we don't have any, we're not in power. Here's what I would say. If we controlled one or both chambers of Congress and Trump was president, then I might agree with you that even though we're a year and 9 months away from an election, that we need to start talking about immigration. But we don't. And we are a year and 9 months away from an election. And then that's where Pisco's point clicks in. Like, we're not going to out-hawk the Republicans on immigration without totally splintering our coalition. It just can't.
I feel like that logic was one of the reasons why we got so into the shit in immigration. Was this idea that Biden waited until like the election year to do something when voters were asking him.
You're right, but what's the big difference? Right. There you go. Spoiler alert. That's the difference, is we have no power. We have none. So I think it's ridiculous to take our limited political capital and throw it at an issue which is not relevant to Democrats at the moment, because against on election year, we have no power. Instead, you need to hit them where it hurts instead of trying to find common ground.
There's a reason Trump started with the border and he started with immigration, is he still feels that it's a point
and
of
what
strength.
did he spend the least amount of time
I'm saying
on?
that's the reason why you're seeing some Democrats in purple districts coming out and saying, yeah, we need to be tougher on the border.
But also, what did he spend the least amount of time on? The economy. Right. So again, where are his priorities? He can't talk about the economy right now because by his own standards, it's a fucking, siren going off. It's a check engine light going off. So he's like, skipping over it, hoping you don't notice. If we know just based on polling that an issue is extremely important, and we know that Trump spends very little time on it, that's where you ruthlessly dedicate your time. And that's where I think, Slotkin did talk about it. She did mention the economy as one of the 3 major things she talked about. But yeah, I just wouldn't spend a lot of time on immigration at this point, especially when we have no power. If we did have power, it'd be different.
I feel like this is just, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go. Sorry.
I'm just saying, like, this is just, in a democracy, this sort of thing is kind of expected. If you see I'm sure a lot of these representatives and senators are being inundated with calls, like asking them to get tougher on the border. And so, this idea that they shouldn't like address it at all seems a bit silly to me, because like immigration was easily Biden's biggest weakness. And so obviously part of Democrats' job for the next 2 years is to, maybe win back some voters who lost trust in them on this issue. I'm not saying you have to be like a fucking border hawk and endorse everything that Biden or that Trump does. Obviously, I'm not saying that, but signaling to voters that you're listening to them, that's just democracy.
You know what they could, what she could have said? She could have said, and while we're on the topic of the border, Donald Trump inherited a border situation in which border contacts were rapidly declining in the last 6 months under Biden. And also, since we're on the topic of the border and also cost cutting, did you know that Donald Trump dedicated $200 million of your hard-earned taxpayer money for a propaganda blitz led by Kristi Noem, in which he tells her to thank him publicly for getting the border under control? Let's talk about that, because it dovetails those things together. Talks about the border, the waste of the Trump administration profligately spending hundreds of millions of dollars in, state-fed propaganda. You could have tied all those things together. I just think that Slotkin, I'll say this, I was worried about how she would deliver her rebuttal. The delivery was better than I expected, right? Because I expected like really
the worst
limp
possible
dick shit.
delivery.
Yes, really. And that's
Katie
no knock
Britt
against
level.
Right. Well, no. Well, actually, the opposite, because I knew Slotkin. I'm familiar with Slotkin enough to know she wasn't going to indulge in that sort of like bullshit theatricality. President Biden. Where it becomes an SNL skit. Her delivery was pretty polished. It was good, but the problem is, I just don't think who you choose to give this rebuttal, I think, says a lot. And the fact that it was Slotkin, who I wouldn't call her a centrist, but she's more center than I like. She voted for multiple Trump officials and shit like that. I'm just sorry. I see no reason to go in that direction this early on. I think we need to try.
You don't see any reason?
No, none. I don't. I mean,
okay.
Hutch, we're really,
yeah.
Hutch, how I get so frustrated.
I'm sorry,
Hutch, the Republicans, they beat. Okay, who was the more centrist party in 2024? The Republicans or the Democrats?
Yeah, I'd say the Democrats.
We took a walloping in that election, right?
I don't think the logic is particularly sound when we look at Kamala's overperformance relative to the other states in those swing states where she was aggressively campaigning, and we have no idea if she would have done even better without like 6
David
months.
Pluff Cope, in my opinion.
I was just gonna say, but
you think that's Cope?
I think it's David Pluff.
Okay.
Again, it's we always repeat this on the show, and it's for good reason, because it's not necessarily about a far left message, right? But it is about a bold message, right? We can even look at Biden's campaign in 2020. Biden didn't say, oh yeah, we're not going to do too much. I mean, it's just, just Trump's really bad. Like, he had this giant platform filled with pretty progressive things on it, like canceling student loan debt, a public option for healthcare, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Like, those were officially adopted positions in the Democratic Party, along, any other stuff that Biden said was, investing in green energy and whatever else, progressive priorities. But it was a bold message that didn't just include Trump is bad and democracy's on the line, this kind of thing. And also, we're really hard on immigrants and stuff like that, and trans people and all that stuff. And, you can look at, say, 2008 when Obama won, right? 2008, Obama was obviously a generationally inspiring candidate, but he didn't exactly run on like a piddling centrist message. At the time, in 2008, Obama was running on a public option, of course, raising the minimum wage, stuff like that, which was...
He was also running on like work requirements for welfare. So it's not like he was like this big bold. He was, quite moderate in some areas.
He was, of course, right? And again, I'm not saying it has to be a far left message or that's necessarily optimal. But I think that the point that Josiah is making, the point that I would make, is that when it comes to immigration or like trans issues, these like particular wedge issues that have given Democrats such a hard time, number one, we're not in power. We're not really accountable for any of that stuff anymore. Number two, yeah, you should have a good answer to when someone asks you about immigration or trans people in sports or something like that. You have to have some sort of an answer. I think that Obama's answer from like 2012 was pretty reasonable. Look, I believe in a secure border, but I also believe in a pathway to citizenship. Immigrants make this country great. We're descended from immigrants. And, that was a pretty good message that didn't totally piss off the Democratic base, but also appealed to a lot of moderates and centrists. What you can't do, though, is go overboard. Like, some people point to blue dogs that are, what's the guy, Dan Osborne from Nebraska, who did do decently well in Nebraska. But Democrats are not, I don't think the best message for Democrats is to run on like a very, very harsh message on these issues, because you do end up alienating part of your base, and that's worse for you than the chance of getting some Republicans or some like tilt conservative independents to come over.
Well, I mean, we're not talking about reality. We're talking about perception here. And what the voters are overwhelmingly like telling us with their actions and with their responses to various polls is that they think the Democratic Party has gotten too out of control. I personally disagree with that. I don't think the Democratic Party has been unreasonably left-wing. I think a lot of that is fear-mongering, and it's a result of right-wing media apparatus, which is just highly organized, and they're highly efficient. And I'm just saying you have to work within that reality.
Yeah, but here's where I would differ, though. I've seen those polls too, and it's more than one. It's multiple polls in which respondents say that they believe that the Democratic Party is too liberal. Okay, You have a good point. But then when those same polls talk about specific policies, they're right where Democrats are. We even saw that during the campaign.
Not necessarily. Not on immigration, not
I
on
understand.
immigration, not on
I
trans stuff, which I'm not saying we should abandon trans people. I'm just saying, like,
but Hutch, and I know you know this because you know the data extremely well. Whose policies, if you take the names off them, you do a blind test, you know the answer to this. Whose policies are overwhelmingly more popular? The
Democrats. But again, we're talking about perception. That's what we're talking about right now.
Well, you didn't let me finish. That's my point.
Okay.
My point is, yes, I understand that when you ask, or because of the propaganda machine, Democrats are seen as too liberal. Until Democrats talk about the shit they want to do, and then it gets overwhelming support. And so I think where Pisco and Econoboy and I are, certainly where I am, is here's the chance. We've got a year and 9 months to try to reframe that. Because no matter what Democrats do, they will always be painted as too liberal. Period. There's nothing that the Democrats can do short of, as I joked last night in my response, where Hakeem Jeffries was like, holding office is a bit too divisive. So I've instructed my caucus to resign en masse. That way we can just, Donald Trump can have a totally unified government.
You seem to be setting up this logic that it's always the right move to be big and bold and bombastic in like what you're promising. And sometimes voters punish perceived overreach. Right now, it's perceived that the Democrats overreached under Biden. I don't agree, but that's what the voters are telling us. This idea that we're not going to respond to that as a party, we should just go purely on offense and just ignore these weaknesses on the border or whatever.
But Hutch, how can that be true? I think that's a bit reductive. I don't think that's what voters punish Democrats because Democrats were the incumbent party and voters were pissed. If it were true that they thought the Democrats overreached, then not only would they say Democrats are too liberal, they would disagree with Democratic policies. There's a disconnect there. You are only half right.
You're right. No, there is a disconnect. But like, let me ask you for example, like what percentage of the country do you think blames Biden for inflation? Probably like 60-70%, to be honest. Let's be real.
You're talking about now? I mean,
yeah, just in general. When people look back on the Biden presidency, like if you ask them the question, do you think Biden caused the inflation from 2022 to 2024?
One of the highest. He was ranked one of the highest causes.
Right, that's what I mean by overreach. I mean, it's silly. It's silly. I don't think it's true, but that's what they think. And so that's what I mean by overreach.
They blamed him because he was the president in power. I guarantee you, if things keep
up, the reasons don't matter though. You're right about that, but the reasons don't matter. It is what it is. This is what they're telling us right now. So I'm just saying,
I'm confused, but they're not in power now. So the thing that caused people to blame Biden for inflation doesn't apply here because the Democrats are not in power. They didn't blame Biden because of a specific policy. Right. They blamed him because he's president, and ergo everything bad that happened must be because of him. Biden's not president now. So what would have been the harm in Slotkin taking a bolder stance in her rebuttal?
I'm just saying, man. I mean, it's just like, for me, it's pretty easy to figure out like why she mentioned immigration. Now, again, I haven't even watched the speech, so I feel like, I'm just going off of what you guys are saying, but like the idea that it would be shocking that she like positioned the Democratic Party to be a little bit tougher on immigration. It's like, why the fuck
I want only offense. I just want offense. That's what I want.
Okay, so
here's my last sometimes you got to play a little bit of defense.
I understand. So here's my last question. When do we stop playing defense? Because we're all friends here. We can say this. I think you think we only want to play offense, and I know I think you only want to play defense. At what circumstances have to align for you to say, you know what? No, let's try.
You know that I don't want to just play defense, though. I just told you at the beginning of this podcast that I wish that they would have like staged every 5 minutes one of the Democrats stand up, disrupt the fucking speech. That's what I mean by like, that's an offensive maneuver. This idea that I only want to play defense.
In them heckling Trump, but in terms of messaging on their policy, you take a more moderate defensive approach. And you think we take a more radical.
I'm just going where the wind blows, brother. I'm just saying that like they are going to moderate. They are going to moderate. They're going to do it. It's going to happen. It's happening right now.
I understand.
Wait, the voter base or the Democrats?
The Democratic Party will moderate in terms of messaging and maybe a little bit even on policy. Well, I mean,
What
again, like
circumstances would have to what would it take for you to say, you know what? No, let's try an AOC giving the rebuttal instead of an Alyssa Slotkin. What would
Fuck yeah, 100%. Do
No,
that
so
shit.
I-
Fucking make it a show.
Listen, it would have made us happy, but would it have made
Wait. So you just
the
said that you would
median
prefer
voter in
AOC?
Michigan?
Wait a second. Hutch, it makes no sense.
No. There's a difference between like Democratic Party specifically appealing to people like me, which, to be clear, most people are not as engaged as us. They're just not. They're just not.
But what
they
would
don't
you
get it.
prefer?
I of course I prefer AOC.
Yeah, so we're all on the same team.
Of course. Now I would be sitting there going base. But you know what? You know, how is it playing to fucking voters in Pennsylvania? How is it? That's all the party's thinking about right now. It's not.
Well,
they're not trying to appeal to people that live in New York or California.
But yeah, that's true. That's true, Hutch. But again, I think it's obviously a disagreement as to like what people really want and like what the right strategy is, right? Because look, the only poll that I've seen in regards to like people who voted for Biden and didn't come out to vote for Harris was that one Gallup poll. And you know, I mean Gallup's obviously a reliable pollster. And it seemed like the group of people who decided, hey, I voted for Biden, but I'm not going to come out to vote for Harris, was not a group of like centrist people who were dissuaded by, you know, radical leftism or, you know, this perceptions of moderation within the Democratic Party. It was the opposite. This was a group of overwhelmingly progressive people who said, look, frankly, I just don't think that the Democratic Party is going towards me quite enough. Now, you could always have the counterfactual and say, well, hey, you know, if they did do that, then maybe a bunch of people would come out and all of a sudden vote for Trump, or they wouldn't vote. Maybe the poll would be reversed and a bunch of centrists would be like, no, I'd have rather had a more centrist candidate. But, you know, that I think that's compelling to me, at least. And I think especially when you see at least some of the efforts from the Democrats during that time to try and peel away, you know, conservative or like more like, you know, right wing voters, the extinct Reagan Republicans of the world. And it just seems to have failed.
It feels like we're chasing voters constantly. It feels like we're chasing where people are at instead of providing an affirmative. I think the word is bold vision. And I think that whenever we're chasing the narrative and like, I think playing more reactive, I don't know that it plays well to the voter. I don't know the voter is ideological. I think they need a leader.
That's not always the best strategy for the moment. And obviously, I think all three of us would agree with Hutch on that point. But I mean, I think that when you see the leadership approval rating for the Democrats at like 25%, like you have like only the most like, you know, blue MAGA people on the planet that are supporting the Democrat leadership at this point. I just think that kind of palpable anger is something that's, you know, a sign that you should go a lot more bold with your message. You know, I think that's a pretty reasonable signal.
Somebody in chat said that the invitation link was not working, so I have created a new one and posted it again. Sorry about that. Again, if you're trying to get in and the link isn't working, just say something in chat and we'll figure it out. But I think this link should work.
I'm just saying, I'm not seeing what you guys are seeing in that I'm not seeing that there's this large, broad appetite for Democrats to go bigger and bolder, even if I preferred that they would.
No, I know that you would prefer.
I'm just where are you guys seeing that? I'm not seeing that.
The poll I just referenced and the polls I just referenced.
You referenced a dissatisfaction poll with Democrats. That doesn't mean that the answer would be necessarily to go big and bold. How do you know that? How do you know
ask yourself, like, I mean, certainly polling is not complete information. There's always some conjecture in there. But when I see one poll that says that millions of people decided not to vote for Harris because, you know, and they were a group of like largely very progressive people. And then you see another poll which says that Democratic leadership has extremely low approval rating. And the main coverage of Democratic leadership that I've seen, even on traditional news media outlets, and you see this reflected within party debates, is like a bunch of moderate Democrats that are like, hey, I'm pretty sick of all these goddamn constituents telling me to be louder and bolder with my message, you know, a la Hakeem Jeffries. It's like, it just seems like those are the calls they're getting in their offices, and you know, that seems like.
What about a year and 9 months ahead? Why don't we just try something else? Because I don't think you believe that Kamala lost because she ran a bold progressive campaign. I know you would agree with the consensus that she ran a relatively moderate campaign compared.
I challenge the idea that she would have done better if she would have ran like fucking Bernie in 2020.
Okay, maybe it doesn't have
that
to
is
be
crazy to me.
Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't have to
No,
be
she
Bernie.
would not, dude.
But maybe it
There's-
doesn't. Wait a minute. Maybe it doesn't have to be Bernie. But that's why I asked you, and I think it's strange that you're not answering. Because
what am I not answering?
What would it take? What
Answer
would
the
it
question,
take
Hutch.
for you? Yes or no? It's not a yes or no question. What would it take for you to say, okay, you know what? Nearly 2 years ahead of the next election, let's try something bolder and different.
Bernie would have won the election. Bernie would have won.
What would it take for you?
I don't agree.
No, God damn it. Answer my question.
Agree.
Shut the fuck up, Pisco. Answer my question, Hutch.
What would it take?
What
It would take enough constituents putting pressure on their elected representatives to do that. That's what it would take. That's fucking democracy.
Look, as soon as Trump
That's
passed
what it
the
would take.
Enabling
Wait,
Act,
but
Hutch
wait a
is,
minute. But Econoboy, wait a minute. Econoboy gave you an example of the reports about them being inundated with calls and pressure to be bolder.
But you're suggesting that dissatisfaction polls imply that they want the party to turn into like Bernie stuff. That's not what the polls are saying. How could you possibly know that? How do you know that
wait a minute.
more than 50% of those people are not happy that they get...
To be clear, it would take polling data suggesting that
action. It would take action. It would take action from people's constituents. If you want your constituents to vote for Medicare for all and do open borders or whatever the fuck,
we're talking about 2 years
show
before.
up.
Fucker. I'm gonna fly to California.
I've never seen him this animated before.
I'm talking about 2 years before an election. So there are no votes. I need to know what it would take for you to say, okay, an AOC or a fucking Jasmine Crockett or somebody, Maxwell Frost, somebody besides Alyssa Slotkin and Dick Durbin, like giving a fucking rebuttal to a speech. What would it take?
I just
tell me it's
find
not polls. No, I don't care. I don't care. I'm asking you to tell me what would it take. What would you need to see?
I don't know. We need some space from this election, but I find the proposition that if we would have had AOC do the rebuttal,
it would have been more than 5,000 people would watch it, Hutch.
After an election where the voters were like overwhelmingly saying we think the Democrats have gone crazy.
You know
and
what?
You guys want to put AOC to do the rebuttal because
like
you like her speech. I just think that's funny.
Through the fucking chest. You know what I just found out? I just realized Hutch wanted Jerry Connolly to be the ranking member on oversight.
He was the clincher.
You motherfucker. We know who was lobbying everybody. He was like Hakeem.
No, that I agree with you guys. That I agree with you guys. That I 100%
That needs to be everything, Hutch. That needs to be everything.
It doesn't.
Everything needs to be energy. Everything needs to be a forward-thinking vision. Everything. And listen, it's not ideological. It's more to do with who she represents and the fact that like she commands I think people's attention and isn't just like fucking cringing in the corner and like scared to let me make sure I say this is and everything that Alyssa Slotkin was talking about seemed manicured and fucking written down by some loser like a consultant. It all like sounded like a DNC created nightmare fuel, and everything is feeling like that right now except for these bright spots that we're trying to fucking kill in the womb.
No, but be honest though. How do you think an AOC rebuttal, just in theory alone, forget about execution, how do you think that would have played to like the median Democratic voter in Arizona, Michigan?
I think that they could have seen
Pennsylvania,
voter.
I think
Georgia. Like seriously.
I don't think that these are policy wonks.
I think if we try and if it turns out it's like the worst fucking rated
what's the harm?
Speech ever, then we say, okay,
what's the harm?
You
get caught trying, Hutch.
The harm is that you play right into what the Republicans are like priming their audiences and have been for fucking decades.
We need to play an affirmative game. Let's be ourselves. If we're gonna do the West Wing comparisons, let Bartlett be Bartlett. Let our fucking Dems shine. Our actual leaders. Alyssa Slotkin does not inspire confidence. Hakeem Jeffries does not inspire confidence. Schumer does not inspire confidence. We have a handful of senators and representatives that inspire confidence in people. It's not about their ideology, and the proof is in the pudding. More people watch AOC's response than like the official 5,000 concurrent viewers on Alyssa Slotkin's speech. No one gave a fuck. And if no one gives a fuck, then really the people who are watching the Democratic response are just us insiders who are cringing at it. And so, I think that we should be trying. And the risk here, a year and change after, before an election is rather minimal. But we're just insistent on doing the same thing over and over again. I think that's crazy. But sorry, I still love you, Hutch. By the way, Hutch, I love you.
Listen,
I
I
love
feel
him, but I
like
love
it's
him
important that I be here to fucking disagree. I mean, I don't entirely disagree with everything you just said. I mean, I share the same exact frustrations with Jeffries and Schumer. I've talked about it with you guys on this pod. I'm just saying, if you expect the fucking Democratic Party to run to the left between now and the midterms, you're fucking insane. And you're setting yourself up to be disappointed.
Well, Hutch,
and
but
that's on you. If you go into something with wildly unrealistic expectations, and then those expectations are not met, and then you get angry, you did that to yourself. That's all I'm saying.
Well, the Democratic, I think it'd be unreasonable to expect them to run to the left because the Democratic Party is seemingly incapable of such a thing. But
That's why we can't
obviously,
do NASCAR. No left turns.
But they did run to the left in 2020. They did. They did run to the left in 2020. Not as far as you might have liked, but they did.
What happened in 2020?
We are not in 2020.
We fucking
my
won,
friend.
baby.
We are
We
in.
won.
We are. Yeah, but we are in 2024.
yeah.
Sorry.
And look, I mean,
No.
obviously, in 2008, I mean, compare Hillary and Obama. Obama was the further left candidate in that primary, and it's hard to imagine Hillary doing better in the general than Obama did in that election. And again, taking into account Obama is very generationally inspirational. But I think that the point about elevating people like AOC is not necessarily, we have to keep repeating this, it's not necessarily that they're progressives. It just happens to be the case that of the Democrats that are fighting back the loudest, it just happens to be pretty much progressives. I mean, there's some examples to the contrary. I like Sheldon.
Moskowitz and Crockett are not like, they're not.
Crockett's a
in the AOC.
progressive.
She's less progressive than
Raskin.
She's less progressive than AOC. But I mean, like, we've got
almost
a
everyone is. Yeah. I think the point is just that it's about who you're elevating and the type of message that we think would be kind of broadly inspirational and the type of voter that we also want to cultivate, right? Like, obviously we could say that AOC's approval rating is like net negative, she's not a very popular politician, but there's a huge plurality of people that just like don't even know who AOC is because she hasn't really been particularly invested in by the party.
She's on the bench. How is she going to shine and become a star if she's on the bench?
And I think that's the thing, right? Like, you see Republicans, obviously, they're not necessarily elevating people like MTG or like Lauren Boebert, like the truly crazy ones in the party. But that's one of the problems, I think, in the Democratic Party is that there's this group of Democrats that in Democratic leadership that they feel like people like AOC are like the Lauren Boeberts for the Democrats. And I just do not think
so different.
I don't think that either.
No, and I'm not saying, I said
Democratic
leadership. Like, I think that there's just
I don't think that's true. You really think that people in Democratic leadership look at AOC like Lauren Boebert?
I think there's a lot of people in Democratic leadership that say if we put AOC in the spotlight, people are going to call us crazy, just like they call Lauren Boebert crazy, and it's not the same. AOC is not nearly as toxic.
We've got a guest who wants to chat with us. I don't know who or about what. Does anybody want to?
I'd rather talk to anybody, but
be a fucking troll.
God damn it,
Hutch, I love you, bro. Listen, at the end of the day, this is all love. I just like seeing Josiah animated
a little bit. MA, what's up, buddy? You're on the air.
MA. There we go.
Massachusetts, you are on the air.
Massachusetts is pretty based.
Pick him out. Didn't have his mic ready. For shame.
Well, I didn't. Did you kick him? I didn't. I think he just vanished. Interesting.
No, I didn't kick him. He just left out of shame.
He was trying to like block Hutch from responding with his Jerry Connolly.
What do you say to the proposition that the median Democratic voter is probably more like Moskowitz than AOC. And that's probably the reason why AOC doesn't get elevated more. And that if the voters themselves were more progressive, then AOC would naturally end up rising more to the top.
I don't think there's any relationship between her not getting or her not being appointed ranking member and where her standing is relative to the median voter. Yeah, it's just seniority.
No, that was just a silly policy that they had. Right. Yeah. No, and I agree with you on that policy. It's silly to do a seniority thing. That doesn't just because you've been on a fucking subcommittee the longest doesn't mean that you're better qualified to run that committee or run the opposition.
All right, we've got Nate. Real quick. What's up, Nate?
Yo, what up?
What's going on?
Ash Wednesday,
hey
represent.
Guys,
let's go.
First-time listener, long-time hater. I think you guys are both right in that the message needs to be unpolished, but it needs to be moderate. Donald Trump himself, like policy-wise, is weirdly moderate. on things like abortion or like gay issues. He like hates trans people, right? But he's moderate on a lot of weird issues.
You think he hates trans people?
I mean, he pretends he does at least, right? Like the base does.
That's more accurate. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think you just need to get someone to go in. Can we can we say slurs on here? Can I say the R-word?
No. Why do you need it?
No.
You need to go call Donald Trump highly regarded, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You need to go in and say he's a bitch, right? And just, you know, I think that'll resonate with voters. You need like a fairly moderate platform, but a bold platform.
I would agree with that over what we got.
I think that they should go up and say Trump's a bitch, he's corrupt as shit, and he's fucking up the economy, and say it in those terms. Now, you know, AOC's not going to exactly say that, but she's going to say that more than fucking.
She call him a bitch. I feel like she call him a bitch.
I don't know what she'll call him, but she'll call him something. She'll
AOC is a socialist, and we've already like had that baggage. We need to get someone like.
Oh my god,
who's we? I thought you said you were a hater.
I am a hater. We need
like,
you
didn't say from what vantage point.
Who's that guy in Arizona? Gallego.
Hey, are you a hater, Nate, because you feel you're more left than us, or because you're more conservative?
I'm just a general hater, especially
fair enough.
on a boy here, because he's a jiu-jitsu guy. You know, that's some gay wrestling shit.
It's true. It's not wrestling. It's not wrestling. Okay.
But I mean, we need like we can't have AOC. We need like Ruben Gallego.
Did you vote for a Democrat in 2024?
Yeah.
Oh, so it is we.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why, do you think I'm conservative?
Who'd you vote for?
You didn't answer the fucking question.
You look like a conservative.
I was getting that.
You said a hater. Yeah, I was like, okay, like, are you basically coming from a conservative vantage point to give us advice?
I just hate Econo Boy personally. That's
true. Me too.
Fair enough.
It's the face. It's the face.
I get it. I've had strangers at the bodega ask me if I voted for Donald Trump. I understand what I look like, but I just
the fucking MAGA hat you were wearing at the time. No, I'm fucking with you. Go ahead. Yeah.
You look like you were concocted in a MAGA lab. Like you look like very prototypical MAGA.
I was at a stand-up comedy show, and the guy said it looked like a MAGA first-round draft pick. So he was
nice. Were you wearing
flannel? Exactly. Have you guys seen the first Deadpool? He's the normal guy who gets brought onto the team. Wait, look.
You're right.
That's the second Deadpool, I think, right?
Yeah.
Oh, is that second? My bad.
Yeah.
The normal guy.
I think we just need a moderate Dem platform who just wants to call Donald Trump a pussy-ass bitch, you know, who wants to say, like, hey, you're the stupid whatever, you know?
Maxwell Frost would do that. Maxwell Frost would do that.
Ruben Gallego, Maxwell Frost, like any like moderate Democrat that's winning, you know, or you know. I think it's possible. Like we need the moderate policies because I think people like a lot of those moderate policies. But I think we need like I have a friend who Econo Boy knows and has talked to who voted for Donald Trump just because he thought Kamala just was like so like uninspiring. And
he has a friend who's stupid. Okay, his friend
was voted for Donald
I was like,
Trump,
oh, why'd you vote for Trump? I just thought immigration. It's like a big, I don't know, seemed like a problem. Like
and
literally, this guy was fucking
and he was like, I'd vote for AOC. Like I disagree with her, and he like goes through like every single policy area. He's like, I disagree with her.
That's what I'm saying, Nathaniel. Okay, listen,
no, you just said it.
But we need that with real moderate policies.
With what? Fiscal responsibility
not everybody's going to be as dumb as this guy and disagree on every policy.
Yes, they are.
No. But we need that kind of like anti-establishment,
listen.
Call like I see it.
In my article, the Democratic Party wish
Nobody
list
reads your article.
on my Substack. Some people do.
I do. It's a great Substack. Please be sure to subscribe.
I have tens of readers. But no, like. In that, I point out there was that one precinct, and look, it's just a single precinct. You can't, go too crazy on this, but there was a group of like 300 or 400 people in a precinct, right? The same group of people. They voted +5 for Trump, +25 for AOC, right? And this was a Hispanic precinct. And so, look, I think there are a lot of people like that who they say, look, I really am just looking for any type of a bold message. Now, I've conceded before. I just kind of get stuck defending AOC because she's definitely my wing of the party. But I've conceded before that it's conceivable that someone like a John Ossoff or a Raphael Warnock would be like a better, more optimal candidate in 2028. Because to Nathaniel's point, I think you might need somebody who is like sort of credibly moderate, but who's also got a really, really strong messaging campaign. But that's kind of been Pisco and I's point this entire time, is that it's not about necessarily being as
Ideology.
Why
far
was I
left as
included in that
possible.
asshole?
Who's the,
Why
who's
was I
the,
excluded from
the,
that?
the lady from
You know, we're the
Jasmine
young
Crockett?
one. We appeal to the
Love her.
youngsters in the audience,
True.
Josiah.
That's
But
fair.
no, but like our point this whole time has not been like we have to go as far left as possible. We have to run the ghost of Karl Marx or we're going to lose the election. It's more so just been about framing and messaging and how you do that. It just happens to be the case, frustratingly to some, that the people who are doing the bold messaging are like all progressives, you know, like
Can
look,
we get into specifics about bold messaging?
Wait a
Can-
minute.
Like, what is,
we absolutely can get into
unfortunately,
specifics.
We've got some other people
Okay.
as well. So
Hey, this is
Nate,
a great caller, man.
Nate,
Hey, I love
come
that.
back, roast Pisco's, or excuse me, Econo Boy some more.
I
on the
will.
next
I'm on
stream.
the,
No, this
the
is
mod
fun.
and the Econo Boy Live and Learn server. Happy Ash Wednesday to everybody.
Great
And,
caller. Great caller. Love
in New
it.
Happy
York,
Ash Wednesday,
come,
brother.
Come hang out with EBC. We're doing affordable housing work. So I'll see you guys later.
All
Awesome.
right, see you,
Later.
buddy.
cheers.
Let's bring in. We got Jack here. What's up, Jack?
Hello.
Jack,
How we doing?
All right. What are your thoughts,
Good.
man? You're on the air. Hopefully, you disagree about something.
Yeah, I think, well, I feel like the conversation being based around like I don't think you should be thinking about like what the correct ideology should be. I think it's more about like I think the ideology first and foremost should be like about liberal democracy because it feels like there's no it feels like if your thing is like I support liberal, nobody cares or supports that in America currently. I feel like, you know what I mean?
Really?
Well,
Really?
there's a strong appetite for authoritarianism, but I do think there are a lot of people that want things to just be quote unquote normal. I don't know if there's
Yeah.
no appetite for liberal democracy. That seems a bit of
I feel like if you go around and you talk about the ideas of liberal democracy, I feel like a lot of people on the left and right, if you talk bad about those ideas, I feel like people are usually like, yeah, dude. Like if you're like, I think like all the representatives are blah blah blah, or you know, I feel like if
Hey,
you
listen, I hear you, and I actually agree in terms of where I wish the country were at. Here's my
Mhm.
friendly pushback. Not that I think that we should abandon that message, but why I think maybe it shouldn't be the focal. That was Kamala Harris's message, and that was it's the fight for our democracy. It's the fight for our institutions. It's the fight to vindicate January 6th and all the
I thought that message
authoritarianism.
was great. I thought that was one of the best parts about her campaign, but
I
was
loved
just
it,
that
right?
She was
I
so
supported it.
quiet. Democrats are so quiet. They don't get out and go anywhere and talk to people, and they don't make noise, and they don't. Trump is going out making headlines because he's in a garbage truck or in a McDonald's, and then Democrats are going on podcasts.
Right, but that's not him. That's not
Democrats
him
already
defending
watch.
that's not him defending a particular government framework. It feels like we should have our own photo ops like that, or our own again messaging, sloganing, and propaganda ministers in charge of our messaging, curating something that's affirmative and not just fucking running these loser consultants. And I agree with you
Mhm.
actually that I don't think it's all, and Conaway made this point too. And I think this is to Hutch's point. I don't think you have to commit yourself to the Green New Steel or whatever the fuck Trump was calling it on the day
Green New
of.
scam.
Yeah, whatever. Green New Scam. You don't have to commit yourself to ideologically.
Mhm.
I think the right take on that is it's about personnel and it's about vigor and energy. And so if you want to, if Hutch has an ideal sorry, one sec, an ideal, more moderate Democratic voice who is that kind of firebrand, and I agree, different than the Marjorie Taylor Greens who are just bad at their job. I would be
do you think
totally in
Biden-
support of that.
Did Biden win because of his zeal and energy?
Biden won because, in my opinion, because of COVID and because
Mhm.
of and honestly because Trump's favorables were so low. That's why I think he won.
You might be right, but lest we forget, Biden was well ahead of Trump in the aggregate polling even before COVID.
Yeah, I think people
in
just like
February
Trump.
before. Right. Anyways, yeah. But
I don't think that's enough anymore. I think now we need to be. We can't rely on that anymore. And it showed in 2024. It wasn't enough to. And obviously, Trump, we hope, will not be on the ballot for again. And I think we'll have actually weaker opponents. I just want to make sure that we're not resting on our laurels because we might win elections on the Alyssa Slotkin method. We might win elections based on Fetterman, but I don't know that we're maximizing our potential when we do that.
Yeah.
What if America were collectively like a 4-year-old and we just put our finger on a hot stove and Donald Trump just might have to break some shit? before people understand.
Well, he's
like
got 4 years.
What happens?
Yeah,
I'm not an
he's got 4 years to do it.
accelerationist. I'm not an
4 years to do
accelerationist,
it.
but I'm just saying, what if like that's what needs to happen for people to understand? Like,
So I've
this
got to
is
bring
what
on.
happens when
it's
you
just-
elect Republicans.
Well, hang on, real quick, guys. We've got to bring on 2 more people. I'm going to leave Jack in here, but Jack, you're going to have to share the limelight with 2 other people because then we're going to have to bow out because we're actually over time. So I've got, I think my boy here from North Carolina.
What up, man?
Yeah, what's up, man? And we've got Ned, who is shirtless for some reason and eating some food.
All of our callers look unhinged.
This is
Strong
what is it?
hairline.
Is it called?
We are a
Strong
mirror
or whatever?
image of you, Pisco. Don't
Yeah.
lie. Come on.
I'm just
Jesus.
You look like the Cobra. You look like the Cobra Kai guy, like the main guy. What's his name?
Oh no, he does.
He does.
That's
Sweet with the
kicks
leg.
out-
Ass.
If that's the aesthetic you're going for, you fucking look exactly like him.
It's like a
He's the
Kevin
bad
Bacon
guy.
type look.
The bad
No,
guy
I
in the
wanna-
first
I
one.
wanted
Go ahead.
to kind of piggyback off of what you guys were talking about, what Hutch was talking about breaking stuff. I kind of want to talk about, we're kind of entering the era that we're in the opposition now. And this is a really scary thing for me personally because I'm half Venezuelan. I remember when Chavez was elected. I was there when he had the coup attempt, and I also was there when he got released from prison and won the election. Everybody was so happy. The whole country was, on fire. They loved it.
Are you
And,
50?
I am not. No. I'm 37.
Okay.
Actually, I'm 37 this next week. But anyway, no, I always visited every year because I'm half Venezuelan. But anyway, so I remember when all this shit happened, and everybody, the political climate in Venezuela was basically, we have to use, opposition. The opposition was, we need to be socialist light, not this hardcore authoritarian Chavez. And I'm just seeing the exact same problems. And I'm really worried about that because it's about endlessly critiquing within our own party to find a leader, to find the right messaging, to find the right tactics. But we don't want to be too mean, but we don't want to be too light. And then they're just going to fucking steamroll while they fucking... The guy will die early, and then he will, have JD Vance or whatever piece of shit.
I don't think so. I think Trump will defy the actuarial tables and make it through his second term. I mean, I think his family is like unusually long lived. So
that's unfortunate, but that's fair enough. But at the same time, I don't like where this is going, where we need to either solidify our messaging, stop getting pussyfooting around, or, we fucking step aside and just say, okay, all right, they've done the thing. We just have to control them, like a Ben Shapiro kind of angle, where we just control the bull in the china shop and we just let them do what they want because they control, the levers of media. They control fucking social media. He's the influencer president. Why the fuck? How the fuck do you control something like that? We're in a populist era. The fact that we're even here talking and we have a huge audience.
You have to lean into populist. You have to lean into populist rhetoric.
Yes, exactly.
What about I don't have your name here, buddy. Ned Stark. What about you, buddy? What are your thoughts on this?
I had a separate thing I wanted to bring up, so we can come back to me. I don't.
Okay. Anybody want to respond to Dorian before we go to the separate thing?
Well, I mean, I'm certainly not saying that like we should be Republican light. That's certain. That's not what Biden did. That's not what Kamala did. A lot of lefties claim that was the case, but it's quite the opposite. Biden ran as a moderate and then governed as like super progressive, just way more progressive than
president in modern American history, to be sure.
Easily, he was way more progressive than like Obama. I think that's the playbook. I think like
that wasn't the messaging, right? Biden never said that. I never heard Biden say that. You never heard him say progressive. He was the most progressive president in American
No. I'm saying when he ran,
he didn't say that for sure, but he was.
He ran as more of a moderate compared to like his part of his platform was like, I'm not Bernie. Don't worry, I'm not Bernie, because a lot of like older voters were worried about that. But yeah, and then once he got in power, he actually governed very, very progressive. I think that's
remember in the moment in the debate stage when he's like, I'm the leader of the party. I'm the one who says what our platform is.
Oh, about defund the police.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yes.
So, all right, Ned, you're up, man. because we got to
this may be dumb, but I need to make a plea to my fellow liberal content producers. I need the cope to stop on this idea that the walls are closing in for Trump, and the federal layoffs, that's what's going to get him, or the Doge it's too incompetent and people are getting upset about that, or the egg prices, or the tariffs. People don't like the tariffs. People don't like Medicaid getting cut. They don't care. People literally love it. Not just his base, but the normies. I don't see any indication that this is getting bad for him at all. I know I keep hearing about the stupid polls. Polls have never been able to poll Trump properly. When we look at actual metrics, all we see is Trump surging, whether it's special elections.
Let him finish.
In California, or it's Republican voter registration outpacing Democrats everywhere. We're fucked. I need to stop. The cope has to stop. We got to.
We got to turn this shit around. I agree.
To your point about the accuracy of polling, the polling in 2024 was actually pretty fucking accurate.
I think it was pretty good.
Especially compared with.
Listen, I think Ned, I think you overstated it. First of all, thank you for the energy. Thank you for. I think our callers today have been fucking awesome. So kudos to all of you.
Yeah, just say real quick. I'm sorry. Just say real quick. Why the fuck do you all pop up 10 minutes before we?
I know we could do a whole fucking.
I was at the gym. I'm sorry. What? I was listening there.
Yo, hey, listen.
I got home. I didn't take a shower. Jesus.
We're gonna start doing this at 7 p.m. Eastern. Like it'd be cool. I'm just saying. I'm sorry.
I want to speak to what Ned said. I think it's really fucking important. One is, I think that there is absolutely a polling specific Trump issue somewhere there. So I'm not saying that the polls are completely off, but they've had to adjust their methods, and they've had issues even in this cycle. Agreed, better than other cycles, but there's something there, and I think he overstates the degree to which polls are not predictive. I didn't hear him say they're never predictive, but that there's some problems. The thing that I think is most important, what he said, is the cope that, oh, don't worry, the voters will abandon him. Now, we have seen evidence, I think, good evidence that there's been some decline. There's no evidence, in my opinion, that the rug is going to be pulled out from under him. And that's what we're looking for. That's what we need in a kind of tight election. I don't know that Democrats would favor that. That's kind of what we had this time around. And so we need to have the rug be pulled under him. And I agree with our caller that we cannot just rely on the material harm to individuals. I think that might work, but we cannot rely on that. And I think anyone who's coping and saying, oh, don't worry, the tariffs will, or the economic condition will absolutely crater him, they need to check their heads.
You don't think that if he plunged us into an actual recession, so 2 quarters of negative growth, you don't think that he would
blame Democrats? They'll blame Democrats for all of it.
No, not just blame Democrats. They'll see it as patriotic. I'm not joking. I've heard this already.
His supporters.
I know. I'm sorry, boy. I've heard this already. I work within manufacturing. I go around doing inspections. I've already of hearing.
No,
this
but
kind
manufacturing wouldn't be affected. No. Listen.
Maybe from very few people, but for like a large portion of people who voted for Trump also voted for Biden in 2020. Like, I have family members who voted for Trump because they have a coworker who told them inflation was caused by this. Or most voters are very low information. They go off the basis of like what the people around them are feeling, and
they blame the
most
incumbent.
Of them are not
typically.
Most of them are super tuned in Fox News viewers who are like super high information, plugged in the conspiracy. Most of them think that Biden screwed the economy and Trump is more common sense. Or
exactly. I just don't think that we can. I don't think it's reasonable to say like, oh yeah, for literally all of fucking American history, recessions have just like plummeted incumbency popularity, but Trump is different. Like, look, Trump is different in some regards, but I don't think he's different in some regards.
We're gonna clip it. March 5th.
Okay, hold on. I want both of you guys. Listen. I want both of you guys to fucking say this. You're telling me if there's a recession, like unemployment over 6%, you don't think Trump's popularity is going to take a hit? Is that what you're saying?
If you take a hit, you mean like 10%, or do you mean like 20%? What are you trying to say? What's your metric?
I put this in our personal. Hold on one second. I put this in our personal show chat. I said, if there's a recession, I think his approval rating goes to 35%.
I feel like people forget that Trump's career, like it was over after 2020. We had like a miraculous set of events that like put him back in the limelight, but by the end of 2020 he was denounced by like the Speaker of the House, the majority of like all House members, Senate members. His approval approvals were really low. Most people were backing DeSantis, Shapiro. Like, he was abandoned by the majority of them, and he had a failed assassination attempt. He squeezed through the primaries by he had like a 10% lead on DeSantis at some point. Like, Trump he's not an eternal figure who's completely unbeatable. He lost in 2020. He was abandoned by the party, and we had a crazy set of events where Biden's popularity swore down. We had October 7th. We had a failed assassination attempt. We had the debate fiasco. We had like a million really crazy things happen all at once. Our incumbent candidate dropped out so his vice president can run. Has that ever even happened? I feel like the idea that I feel like liberals are traumatized and they think that Trump is completely unbeatable.
But right. This is where we bridge the gap. This is where we bridge the gap, which is I don't think these things by themselves will necessarily screw Trump. Facts don't speak for themselves. And I don't think this is what Econoboy and Hutch believe. I don't think that, given the propaganda arm around Trump, given the closed ranks of the Republican Party, Trump is better positioned, I think, to defend against the hypotheticals that we're talking about than any other president who doesn't have the benefit of the propaganda arm or such a close-knit political base. But I think if we were to see a recession, and Democrats made the case, yes, I think we would see a dramatic decline in Trump's popularity.
You also have to consider, Josiah, that he would psychologically unravel. Donald Trump would psychologically, he would literally unravel.
Yes. So wait a minute. Wait, Hutch, you're telling me a man that, that would psychologically unravel and deny reality, like the election of 2020? Like January 6th? Are you kidding me, dude?
No, I mean, if you look at COVID was a really good example. He totally unraveled. And he started doing those daily press briefings, and they were awful for him. And he's prone to
for the bleach industry.
Exactly. He's prone to self-destructive behavior when he's backed up and against the wall, and he does not have the resilience or the fortitude to be a good leader in something like a recession. And he places such a high value on things like the stock market, employment, jobs, whatever. Like he ties himself to the economy. He's such a narcissist that he genuinely thinks that he's the reason for America's prosperity and success. And if America were to crumble, I'm sure he would unravel just like he did with COVID.
And Democrats, of course, will have to step up and make the case. Folks, we've got to let you all go. Thank you so much. Appreciate you all popping in, asking your questions. And again, when we do this, which we didn't emphasize it the last couple of times, if you disagree, you are more than welcome to hop in. We'll put the link in the description, and try not to wait until last 10 or 15 minutes. Fellas, this was fun. Pisco, I wasn't expecting you, man. I
know, man. Hey, sorry about that, but I didn't want to miss it, and so I'd move some things around.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Next week we might have a guest. We might have Mr. Brad Palumbo come on, libertarian guy.
It's a might. It's only a might, or it's a
might. It's a probably.
It's a probably.
Yeah.
Wow. Really? Only a probably?
We might have Brad Palumbo on next week, guys.
I called him Columbo. I don't know why. I'm thinking of the detective.
We also might have JD Vance on.
That's true. We might
have all of your moms
JD's
on,
got nothing else to fucking do. Let's be serious about it, okay? It's not like he's hanging out with Trump or has any sort of governing responsibilities. And that's something else that we're going to try to do, is start having guests more regularly. And it'd be great, Palumbo's a conservative or libertarian.
So
so he's a Republican or a shy Republican. Yeah,
he's very critical of Trump. I mean, I just think it's more interesting if we invite people that are. It doesn't always have to be, but certainly some of the time we should invite people that are ideologically opposed and just see where the conversation goes.
No, I think that's a great idea. Well, this went over a bit, but appreciate it. And I think, are we going to try to start doing 7?
Let's do it.
7:30.
30 minutes earlier.
Yeah, that's great. It can be done.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Cool. Well, fellas, thank you, folks. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next Wednesday at this time, 7 p.m. Eastern, or if you're all the way on the West Coast, 4 p.m.